Look at your own arm right now. Look at your skin. It is thin. It is bare. It is completely fragile. In the brutal mathematics of the natural world, your skin is a massive evolutionary failure. You have no thick fur to trap the heat. You have no dense layer of blubber to stop the wind. You have absolutely no natural armor. If you take a modern human, strip them down and drop them into a frozen winter landscape, they will be dead in a matter of hours. The cold is not just uncomfortable. It is an active, aggressive killer. When the temperature drops, your blood vessels violently constrict. Your body pulls all the warm blood away from your fingers and toes just to keep your heart beating. You start violently shivering. Your muscles lock up. Your brain slows down. Your vision blurs. And eventually, your organs simply shut off. For the vast majority of human evolution, we lived in the baking heat of the African savanna. Our bodies were specifically designed to dump heat, to sweat, to stay cool while running under a blazing sun. But then, humanity decided to walk north. We walked straight into the teeth of the Ice Age. The temperatures plummeted. The skies turned gray. Glaciers miles high covered the continents. By all known laws of biology, the naked ape should have frozen to death. We should have gone completely extinct, but we did not. We survived, and we completely conquered the ice. How did we do it? If you watch Hollywood movies or look at old museum dioramas, the answer seems incredibly simple. You picture a massive, hairy caveman who just killed a bear, ripped the skin off its back, threw the bloody pelt over his shoulders, and grunted in victory. The popular image of ancient clothing is just a heavy animal hide draped over a human body, maybe tied around the waist with a piece of leather. It looks tough, it looks primal, and it is completely 100% biologically incorrect. Let us break down the actual physics of surviving extreme cold. If you take a flat, stiff animal hide and simply drape it over your shoulders, you are not protecting yourself from the cold. You are actually building a wind tunnel against your own skin. A draped hide does not close tightly around your neck. It hangs open at the arms. It gaps at the waist. When a freezing Ice Age blizzard hits you, that sub-zero wind will blow directly up into those massive gaps. It will instantly flush out whatever tiny amount of body heat you manage to generate. The cold air will swirl around your naked chest, completely freezing your core. If you try to survive a glacial winter by just wearing a cape made of dead animal skin, you will freeze to death before the sun goes down. To actually survive the Ice Age, humanity had to solve a highly complex thermodynamic puzzle. We had to figure out how to trap a dead layer of air directly against our bare skin and absolutely refuse to let the wind steal it. We needed a perfect seal. We needed sleeves that hugged the wrists. We needed hoods that wrapped tightly around the face. We needed leggings that completely enclosed the human body. But you cannot get a perfect, tailored fit by just tying a piece of string around a bulky pelt. You have to cut the hide into precise geometric shapes. And more importantly, you have to find a way to permanently, perfectly attach those separate pieces of leather together, so that not a single breath of cold wind can penetrate the seams. Humanity was facing an absolute biological deadline: adapt or die. And in response to that terrifying pressure, our ancestors did not just figure out a trick, they invented what is arguably the single most important piece of survival technology in the entire history of our species. It was not the spear, it was not the bow and arrow, it was not even the wheel. It was a microscopic, incredibly fragile sliver of bone. It was the eyed needle. When archaeologists dig up ancient sites from 30,000 years ago and find these tiny bone needles, they do not look like weapons. They look like delicate, insignificant little toothpicks. But you have to understand the staggering level of engineering required to make one. You cannot just pick up a rock and smash a needle out of it. To make a prehistoric needle, a human engineer had to take the dense, hard antler of a reindeer or the solid bone of an Ice Age mammal. They had to use a razor-sharp piece of flint to carve a deep, perfectly straight groove into that bone. They had to carefully wedge the flint in and snap off a tiny straight splinter. Then they had to sit in the freezing cold and grind that splinter against a piece of rough sandstone for hours, slowly tapering it down into a smooth, perfectly symmetrical point. If they pushed too hard, the bone would instantly snap, and they would have to start all over again. But the point is not even the hardest part. The true genius, the monumental leap in human cognition, is the eye of the needle. How do you punch a microscopic hole through a sliver of bone that is barely thicker than a piece of dry grass? You cannot hit it. You cannot smash it. Our ancestors had to invent a specialized micro drill. They created tiny, incredibly sharp stone awls. They would carefully, painstakingly spin this tiny stone drill against the top of the bone splinter, grinding away a fraction of a millimeter at a time, boring a perfect, clean hole straight through the material. This process required immense patience, perfectly steady hands, and a level of spatial reasoning that no other animal on Earth possesses. The bone needle is a masterpiece of prehistoric microengineering. It is the prehistoric equivalent of building a silicon microchip. And by the way, if you are fascinated by the sheer genius of the ancient human mind and you want to understand exactly how our ancestors engineered their way out of extinction, you need to join our tribe right now. Hit the subscribe button and leave a like on this video. The Mesolithic Mind channel is completely dedicated to decoding the brutal, incredible reality of human survival. We are uncovering the ancient secrets that kept your ancestors alive. So subscribe, get comfortable, and let us get back into the freezing cold. Once the eyed needle was invented, it completely revolutionized the human relationship with the natural world. With a needle, you could thread a thin piece of animal sinew, which is incredibly strong and waterproof. With that thread, you could finally puncture two separate pieces of tailored leather and stitch them tightly together. This is where the magic of thermodynamics actually happens. Sewing allowed ancient humans to completely redesign the architecture of their clothing. They stopped draping hides over their shoulders, and they started building wearable shelters. They invented the concept of layering, which is the exact same principle that modern Arctic explorers and mountaineers use today to survive on Mount Everest. First, they would take soft, pliable animal skins, like the hide of a rabbit or a young deer. They would tailor these skins into a tight-fitting base layer, a shirt and leggings, but they would wear them with the fur facing inward, directly touching their naked skin. This is the crucial thermodynamic hack. The dense fur acts like a sponge, trapping the radiant heat coming off the human body. It creates a microenvironment, a tiny enclosed pocket of tropical air right next to the skin. But a base layer is not enough, because the wind will eventually cut through it. So, they used the needle to build an outer shell. They would take heavier, tougher hides, like reindeer or bear, and stitch them into a thick outer parka. But this time, they would wear the fur facing outward. This outer layer acted as the armor. It shed the falling snow. It blocked the slicing wind, and the double-stitched seams ensured that the cold could not penetrate the joints. They used the needle to sew waterproof boots out of thick animal leather, stuffing them with dried grass for extra insulation. They sewed thick mittens because they knew that losing your fingers to frostbite meant you could no longer hold a spear, which meant you would eventually starve. They sewed deep, heavy hoods that framed their faces, trapping the heat that naturally rises from the head and chest. Look at what is actually happening here. This is not just a story about fashion. This is the story of a biological heist. The human body is weak. We do not have the millions of years required for evolution to slowly grow a thick coat of fur on our bodies. So, we used our massive brains to cheat the system. We killed the apex predators of the Ice Age. We stripped them of their evolutionary advantages, and we used a tiny sliver of bone to literally stitch their biological armor onto our own bodies. We stole the warmth of the wolf. We stole the wind resistance of the bear. We stole the waterproof skin of the seal. We became the ultimate apex predator not just because of our weapons, but because we could adapt to any environment in a matter of weeks, simply by changing our clothes. This microscopic piece of bone technology completely changed the trajectory of human history. Without tailored sewn clothing, humanity would have been permanently trapped in the warm, tropical zones of the Earth. We would have been entirely confined to Africa and the southern edges of Asia and Europe. The frozen north would have been a permanent death zone. But because of the needle, the invisible barrier of the cold was completely shattered. We could walk into the freezing tundras of Siberia. We could hunt woolly mammoths on the massive, sweeping glaciers of Ice Age Europe. We could stand on the frozen shores of the Arctic Ocean. And most importantly, we could cross the Bering land bridge. During the last ice age, massive amounts of the Earth's water were locked up in glaciers, which caused the sea levels to drop dramatically. This exposed a strip of land connecting Asia to North America. But this land bridge was not a tropical paradise. It was a freezing, howling, desolate expanse of ice and sub-zero winds. You could not cross it with a simple fire, and you absolutely could not cross it wearing a draped animal pelt. The only reason human beings were able to survive that brutal crossing, the only reason humanity was able to expand and populate the entire North and South American continents was because they were tightly sealed inside heavily tailored, double-layered, perfectly stitched thermal suits. The needle was the key that unlocked the rest of the planet. We tend to look back at ancient humans and think of them as primitive. We think of their tools as crude. We look at a bone needle in a museum display case and we barely even register it. But that tiny, fragile piece of carved antler is the reason you are alive today. It is the reason your ancestors did not freeze to death in the dark. The invention of clothing was not just about staying comfortable. It was the first time in the history of the Earth that a living creature looked at a hostile, deadly environment and decided that it did not have to submit to the cold. We did not wait for evolution to save us. We took a sharp piece of stone, we carved a needle out of bone, and we engineered our own survival. We wrapped ourselves in the stolen armor of the Ice Age. We stepped out into the blizzard, and we conquered the world.